So I was raised in a Christian home till I was 6, and that was really foundational for me and really awesome for me because I got to know Jesus really little, and I could always hear his voice, and I always felt his presence, and just knew that he was with me. Like, we hung out, we were friends, and we just did everything together, and I just knew that. And I remember my mom talking about heaven, and I could picture it, and I remember seeing my dad and mom at church and just being really involved and always doing Christian type activities, again, until I was only 6. And then when my mom left my dad, she left him for another man, and at that time she left everything. So she not only left my dad, but she left God, she left church, she left everything that was what we were accustomed to. And so I remember my first horrible memory, just the life changer for me, was when we're driving away in a car with the guy in the front seat, my mom in the passenger seat, and my little sister in between them, and I'm in the back seat. And I remember looking out the window and seeing my dad sitting on the front porch of our house, just with his head down, and he was just shaking and crying. I could see tears falling from his eyes, and here he was, this big, strong cowboy, and he was absolutely a broken mess. And I was a daddy's girl, so I was that fun-loving, just curious, funny little girl that loved your dad and rode horses and danced all the time. In fact, I used to wear my pink leotard and ride my pony and ride my horse and pretend I was going to be a rodeo star someday, and just all these dreams and all these aspirations, and just wanted to grow up and be a mom and be a wife and run my own business and all these things. And in that moment when my mom made that decision, when we were driving away, it was like everything changed. And I remember making up a story in my head now I know it was just to save myself from the immense pain that I was in. But I remember picturing that we were driving to this 2-story yellow house, and divorce meant that we were moving, and they were just driving us to our new house, and my dad was going to meet us there. And of course, that's not how it went. And so from that moment on, I became very, very angry. And I've always been outspoken, so I was totally telling my mom how everything she was doing was wrong, and she needed to go back, and she needed to be with my dad, and I needed to be there, and I want my dad, and was always praying, just God, please make them get back together, please, and that never happened. And so my faith in the Lord got really stretched at that time too, because he was the one guy I knew could fix it, and he didn't. And so I got upset with him too. And so from that moment on, just that anger really drove a lot of my choices, and I put myself in a lot of bad situations, just crying out for attention, because here I go from a daddy's girl to dad's not anywhere around. So he was there every other weekend, and then it was once a month, and then it was just go to the movies, and then maybe go to eat. And I always remember when he would start to take me back to my mom's, that I would just be crying, please don't take me back, please. And I grew up with a really deep sense that my mom didn't love me. In fact, I always said, how could she hate me when I look just like her? I don't understand why she hates me. And so I just felt very rejected as a little girl, and very alone and very abandoned. And I was always that girl who needed a lot of affection. I needed a lot of, touch affection, but I also needed a lot of words of affirmation, and didn't get that. And so all of a sudden I started getting cute in my teenage years, and guys started really paying attention to me, and I was able to really use that to my advantage and try to get those needs met. And so when I became a teenager, all of a sudden I started getting cute. So I wasn't that cute little girl. My sister was the cute one, I was not. And then all of a sudden, around 13, 14, guys really started to pay attention to me. And so I got really good at being flirtatious, and really good at getting guys' attention, and just perfecting that side of me. And I had a good teacher, because my mom was very pretty, and she was total, there's the womanizers and there's the man-eaters, and my mom was like that. And so I learned, from the best, and just remember, she would say, do as I say, not as I do, but of course that doesn't work. So I followed everything that she did. And anyways, so around the age of 14 is, well, a little bit before that, I had my eye on this one guy, and he was my stepbrother's best friend. And I was really, really flirting with him. And I had flirted with him for a couple of years, and he never noticed me. Well, all of a sudden he noticed me, and he was just so good looking and just so cool. And, you know, I just set my eyes on him. And so anyways, one day he asked me to skip school and hang out with him. So I did, and was just like so honored, and like, you know, I'd never kissed him. He had never done anything with me. And so anyways, he says, well, you know, I wanna take a nap. You know, you wanna take a nap with me? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't want to take him into my bedroom because I still had a little girl bedroom. And I was like, oh, my mom has a water bed. My mom has this cool room, so I'll just take him in there. And so we're laying down, we're making out, and I'm thinking, you know, oh my gosh, so cool. And I had no idea what was about to happen. And so anyways, he raped me, and that was my first sexual experience. I had never been with a guy before, always wanted to wait till I was married. Even though I was playing with fire and doing all these things, I never wanted to have sex before I got married. And so once that happened, immediately I was like, oh, well, you know, I've crossed the line of no return. There's nothing I can do about it. So, oh, well, I'm just going to start doing it. And so from that point, I didn't call it rape. I didn't call it rape until years later. But from that point on, I made the decision that I would never be a victim again. And so I actually became the predator, and started looking for guys that I could sleep with, guys that, you know, kind of the bigger, the better, you know, the badder, the worst guys. Those are the ones that I always went after because I wanted to crush them. And I had always had ill intentions. It was never that I was trying to bless somebody, that I was trying to help somebody. It was always that I was going to take them down. And I just had this freight train of bitterness because of what had happened to me. And over the course of my teenage years, in fact, it was within the first couple of years, I was raped 3 times. And those are the only times that I count. There was a lot of other times that I was screaming in my mind for them to stop, but I had gotten in too far. There was nothing I could do about it. So I just went along with it. And so I became very promiscuous to the point of an addiction. And along with that, I started using drugs, started using alcohol, started smoking cigarettes, like all that stuff, the same year that I was raped. And so that just sent me on a really, really hard path. Of course, I always chose the wrong guys because I was going after the big tough guys. I always chose the abusive guys and the guys who were cheaters, and just really intimidated me. And so I went through a lot of abusive relationships, and just with a lot of guys with the wrong intentions toward me. Nobody ever saw the real me because I didn't let them. And through the entire time of me living like that, I still love Jesus. Like, I still would talk to him. I'd still pray for him, or pray with him, pray, you know, for my life, and pray that God would, you know, get me out of that lifestyle and stuff. But I never actually lived for him. So it's like, it's one thing to give your heart to Jesus, and it's another thing to go all in with him. And so, you know, when I was little, I knew him, and I would feel him and sense him and loved him, and everything was great, and he felt like he was right there with me. But the further I got in my sin, the further away he felt. And so when I was 14, after a couple of the rapes, and after me already drinking and smoking weed and stuff like that, I went to a church and got saved. So I, you know, yes, Jesus come into my heart, and did that whole thing, but I never changed my life. I just thought he was going to change it. Like, you know, it was just going to be, you know, hey, I say the words and he's going to change my life. And that's not how it happened. And so my life never changed after that. And it took a long time before it did. But when I was 14, that was kind of the year of all years, next to when I was 6, when my mom first left my dad. But the year of my 14th year was the year I got raped. It was the year that I was kicked out of my mom's house, the year that I got saved, the year I started drinking and smoking weed. So that was just a huge year for me. And so a lot of times I have a heart to go back and reach those girls at that age, because it's more of a preventative ministry, because I don't want them to go down the same road I went down. And anyways, I think there's a real big difference between giving your heart to Jesus and giving your life to Jesus. So at 14 is when I gave my heart to Jesus, and I understood that I was saved. I understood that I was going to get to go to heaven, and I understood that he could change my life. But for some reason, my life didn't change. I literally got saved, walked right back out of there and went right back into my same lifestyle. So I didn't make any choices that went along with the decision that I just made in church. And I also didn't have anybody that took me by the hand and said, hey, let me show you how to be a Christian, woman. Let me show you how to walk this walk. Let me show you what we do. And I didn't have any of that. And so I also had never heard anyone share their testimony. So I didn't realize that God could use girls like me or women like me. And it wasn't until much later that I learned that. And so when I was 16, I was already living with my first boyfriend, who was 9.5 years older than me. And I was just thinking about this the other night, that when I met him, I had literally just turned 16, and he was, 24, 25. And I remember 8 days later, he took me to Disneyland, and we spent a week there. And, and then I moved in with him as soon as we got back. And that was a horrific relationship, really abusive. And he was sexually exploiting me in a lot of different ways. And it was just a horrible time in my life. And ended up being with him for 3 years. And it was just kind of one boyfriend after another. And in between those boyfriends, there was a lot of different guys. So I was very promiscuous to the point of an addiction. And I didn't even like sex for the first, maybe year or two of doing it. But then I talked myself into, oh, well, I'm going to be doing it anyways, so I love it. And I just kind of tricked myself. And so when I was 17, I got pregnant with my first son, Stefan. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't even love the guy. How am I going to stay with this guy and raise his kids? So I decided not to stay with him, and I became a single mom. And he's been the hugest blessing of my life. He's been so good to me. And I remember at first when I had him, I used to say, my son, he's like my savior. Gosh, if I wouldn't have had him, what would I be doing? And I would have thought, and you would have thought, somebody, would think that their children are going to be, worth it, that they're going to, quit doing certain things because they have kids now. And for a while I was able to, but that quickly turned. I went right back to my old ways and then drug him through that same lifestyle. And I had my first abortion when I was 19 years old, and, was talked into it by family members, talked into it by friends, and something I never ever wanted to do. And, but I did it anyways. And it's funny because growing up, there was this whole list of things I was never going to do and never going to be, but I ended up becoming all of them. And so I remember, looking at my mom or looking at other people and just saying, I'm never going to get divorced. I'm never going to be an alcoholic. I'm never going to be a drug addict. I'm never going to be a bad mom. I'm never going to have kids, without being married. I'm never, never, never. And I became all those things and then some. And so, So had my first abortion when I was 19 and just didn't even deal with it. I just went in, had the procedure done, and just shut off my emotions, because when you're going through things like that, you just have to click off all the different emotions, because if you feel one emotion, you have to feel them all. And so that's where all the drugs and alcohol came in. It was having to deal with all the different shame in my life and all the different guilt, and also being able to have the courage to live that crazy lifestyle and be able to put myself in dangerous situations and not feel the fear that I was feeling. So that's where the drugs were helpful for me and helped me survive through it. Even though they were completely destroying me, they were also helping me to survive through it. And I got married for the first time when I was 20, and was already 3 months pregnant with my second son, Jordan. And smoked weed through my pregnancy, and was smoking weed the day that I, got married. And I just, for somebody who wanted to be a mom all her life and somebody who wanted to be a good wife, all of her life, I was horrible at it. And even though I really loved my kids, my actions didn't show that. And so that was always just a really deep shame of mine. And so anyways, going along, I divorced him very quickly. So again, checked another thing off my list that I said that I wasn't going to do. And so divorced him really quickly, and then ended up going through a series of relationships again. And I met the mother of all. So I met a guy who was definitely my match. in a bad way. So I was always the girl who was looking for the guys that I could take down. I would, I was a self-professed heartbreaker. I would find the guy that, said he had never fallen in love, and I would do everything that I could to get him to fall in love with me, and then I would leave him. And this guy was very much like that. And so when I met him, it was such a challenge for me, and I was such a challenge for him, that we were just very, very toxic. And he ended up just completely destroying everything that I believed about myself. And really, no matter how good I did, he would always raise that bar. So he's a real perfectionist, a real narcissist. He was abusive and a drug addict and all these things. And so as good as I tried to be, as perfect as I tried to be, it was never good enough for him. And he did a lot of damage to me, just physically and emotionally and mentally. And I was diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia, like literally probably a month and a half into the relationship. Like, he had that much mind control over me, and I had never done any hard drugs until I had gotten together with him, and he introduced me to everything from ecstasy to coke to meth. I mean, all of it. And so I was already a party girl, so I already had that kind of in my blood, and I was just already in that lifestyle. But those were the things I said I would never do. Like, I'd never do the hard drugs. But once again, just another list I checked off. And so he got me really strung out on different things. So anyways, he just was set out to completely destroy me, and he almost did. I mean, I literally felt like I was upside down and inside out when I finally left him. And I learned a lot of things after I left him when I was going through healing, that a lot of women who are in abusive situations, it takes them 7 times to leave. And so for me, it took me 11 times. I literally left him 11 times and would keep going back. And he did a lot of things to control me, like taking my driver's license and taking my social security card, and taking my vehicles, or doing something to my vehicles where I couldn't drive away. And just made me feel so bad, like I couldn't live without him or whatever. And almost destroyed my faith in the Lord. But anyways, I finally left him and thought, I'm just going to leave him. I'm going to be on my own. This is going to be great. And but the thing was that he got me strung out on the drugs. And so up until that point, I just thought I was a party girl, and just like, hey, I just like to have a good time. I go out to the bars, I go clubbing, I drink, and I get high on the weekends or whatever. But after I left him, I was in so much pain. I started doing meth every day. And I realized through that year, oh my God, I have a problem. Like, I'm literally a drug addict now, and I'm actually like a junkie now. And I couldn't do anything without being high, anything. I had to get right up and get high. And if I didn't have meth, I would do anything else I could get my hands on. So I just started mixing pills with, cocaine and alcohol and meth and just anything I could do. And it was so crazy because I always had this little bit of hope. I always had this little bit of faith, even though my life was an absolute mess. And so towards the end of that part of my lifestyle, I remember I was messing around with a married guy, and he was a backslidden Christian, and he started giving me Christian CDs and Joyce Meyer, video cassette tapes. And so here he is, just like coming after me in the wrong way, but God is using him to help me, which was so crazy. So anyways, I'm completely high on meth, and I'd be listening to Joyce Meyer, and I'd be scrubbing my walls and bleaching them down and rearranging my furniture because I was, insane. I mean, it literally was insane from the lifestyle, and, going several days without eating and several days without sleeping or drinking water and things like that. And I remember falling asleep. It'd probably been about 4 days that I was up, and I slept for, maybe a couple hours. And I remember going into the kitchen, and on my refrigerator was a hot pink, like, Post-it note that said, "Stop punishing yourself." And the crazy part about that was it was in my own handwriting, and I don't remember writing it. And so that is really what my life was like, because I was punishing myself for all the things I became that I never wanted to be. All the things that I dreamed of being were over. I mean, I had ruined everything. And, I could look in my kids' eyes and just see the pain that I caused them. I could look in my parents' eyes and see their disappointment in me. And Nobody trusted me, and nor should they have. But I was just such a disappointment to myself because I always felt like I'm supposed to be more than this. I'm supposed to do more. I'm supposed to be more. I love people. Why am I living like this? And so anyways, at that time, again, I was listening to Joyce Meyer, and I'm listening to Christian music. Natalie Grant was another CD that guy gave me. And I remember just playing this stuff in my house, completely high out of my mind, and down on the floor, on my knees, just crying out to the Lord, like, please, God, take me out of this lifestyle. Please, like, please help me. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to put the pipe down. I don't know how to get out of this. And, I would still go to church and things like that, but I was always that girl in the back row that would just, slip in, raise my hands, cry, worship. They'd have an altar call. I'd go back up to the altar and get re-saved. I mean, I was probably like re-saved like 25 times. I don't even know, but it just never worked. And part of it was I never let anyone into my life. Nobody knew what I was going through. Nobody knew who I actually was or what help I actually needed. And I thought I had to get good. And then, I could have friends there. Or then, I would be able to somehow volunteer at church or something. But I remember just being in the back part of the church and looking at the sea of people and going, they were born good, I was born bad. I'm not like them, and so, hey, this is just the hand that God dealt me, and I'm just going to play it the best that I can. And so, but I really had this core belief that something was really wrong with me, that I was a mistake, that I was born bad, and I was broke. I didn't know about love. One of the things that the Bible talks about is love God and love people. And I was like, I don't understand love. I don't get that. It's so elusive. Every time I try to grab it, it just, goes out of my hands, and I just don't understand it. And it's like the one thing I needed to know, and it was the one area I just couldn't even understand or grasp. And so, being there in the apartment and praying that God would help me, that he would deliver me, that he would just take me out of there. I mean, I was praying spiritual warfare and just doing all the stuff these tapes were telling me, and, singing these songs. And it was just, this hope was welling up in me, but I could not get out of that addiction. And I didn't even try to at that point. I was just trying to do it in my own strength. And so anyways, I ended up calling my dad and asking him if me and my sons could come home and live with him, and him and his wife. And I hadn't lived with my dad since I was 6 years old. And so coming home to his house was, something that was very scary. But I knew that I needed to do it. And what I thought the reason why I needed to go out there, I thought because I needed to leave the city and go back to the country. Like, that's all I need. I just need to change environments. I just need to get out of the city and go to the country. And that is so far from what it actually was, because wherever you go, there you are. So it's just because I moved to another area, I just took myself with me. And so brought all my problems and everything. But he did allow us to move in with him, me and my two sons. And prior to us moving out to my dad's house, I talked to him and I said, look, Dad, like, I got to keep it real with you. I'm strung out. I'm not doing good. And at the time I was probably 90 pounds and I'm 140 something now. So, I was just really strung out and really unhealthy. And it was funny because just before that, before I actually made the call to my dad's, here I am praying that God would help me. And through this whole time, it was actually getting worse and worse and worse. So I lost my job and couldn't get another one. And here's a person who could get any job I wanted, really, and not even have to fill out applications. And now I can't even get a job. So that door was closing. And then my car got stolen by a tweaker. So I lost my car. And then my cell phone was shut off, and then my home phone was shut off. Like, all these things were happening. I'm like, here I am praying. I'm like trying to get out of the situation. All this bad stuff is happening. Well, little did I know that God was answering my prayer, and he was just closing those doors because he was leading me, somewhere else. And so anyways, my dad and stepmom said yes, that we could come there, we could live there, but I needed to get a job and I needed to do what I need to do and to get healthy. And so I agreed to that and went out there, and I started going to 2 different churches, and I was going to a Bible study every single week and reading my Bible every day, and I was praying, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I quit doing the meth, and I tried to not drink so much. I tried to not smoke so much weed, and I was tapering myself off of those things. And I was just kind of felt like I was in a strange land because I moved from the big city to a little tiny town and nobody knew me. So I went into the church like, hey, I'm just the new single mom in town. And I had a way of making myself look like I just fit in and never let anybody in to see who I actually was or what I was struggling with. And so anyways, I was there about 2 months and I was like, gosh, why am I feeling like this? Like I'm still having night sweats. I'm still like not feeling good. Like what the heck is wrong with me? And then I realized like, oh my gosh, like I might be pregnant. And so I went to the dollar store and got a pregnancy test and went into the McDonald's there in town, took the pregnancy test and was pregnant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I already have 2 kids by 2 different dads. You know, I've already had an abortion. Like, I can't have another abortion, but I didn't even know who the father was. And so I knew it was between a few different guys. And anyways, I was just really like, you know, all I do is screw up. Like, no matter how hard I try, I screw up. You know, here I am doing all this good stuff and it doesn't matter because this is just what I end up doing. And so anyways, I contacted one of the guys that I thought might be the father and went and talked to him, and he totally pushed me into having another abortion and just was like, hey, I can't be a dad. I was like, look, I don't want to do that. Like, I've done this before. I don't want to do that. You know, I'm going to church. I'm doing this. I'm like really trying to be good now. And at first I had considered just raising this child by myself, but I ended up giving in to the pressure and had another abortion. And so as soon as I made the decision that I was going to have that second abortion, that's when I backslid. And that's when I went and got high and was just like, you know, I just got to do it. And I just tried to shut off all the emotions, but couldn't. And so anyways, I went and had the abortion, and I remember not even taking the pain pills. They offer you pain pills and you can get like Vicodin or get whatever. And I opted out of that because I wanted to feel the pain. And the reason why I was like, I deserve to feel this. Like, you know, I'm about to go through this. Like I deserve this and I don't want anything to kill the pain. And so anyways, thought I was crazy, and I probably was. But anyways, so I did that, and then it was just really downhill from there. And I only had a couple more weeks until my 30th birthday, and I had already pre-registered at one of the churches I was going to go on this women's retreat. And so I had planned for my 30th birthday, that's what I was going to do. It was like the day after my 30th birthday or something. And so I decided I was going to go to this women's retreat. And that day I was on MySpace and I was like looking around for guys, and ended up meeting this guy on there and talking on the phone, and he was like, hey, you should totally come and meet me. You know, come meet me for a beer. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to go be a good girl this weekend. No, sorry. And he goes, oh, come on, 1 beer. That's not going to hurt you. I was like, I'm not really a 1 beer kind of girl. So yeah, I'm going to have to like do that another time. And so he goes, so where's your retreat at? I said, oh, down at the beach, down at Seaside. And he said, oh, I know this great little bar. Seriously, just like swing through there, 1 beer with me. You can go off, go be a good girl if that's what you want to do, and, you know, whatever. So I ended up meeting him, and 1 beer turns into 2, and 2 turns into 3, and before I know it, I'm a bottle of wine, and now we're in a hotel room together. And so I ended up staying the night with that guy, and woke up the next morning, and we went out to breakfast. And so I'm skipping the first night of the retreat. So now I've missed the first day, and I'm out having breakfast, and I'm still drunk. So I am literally like, could smell the alcohol on me. And so we're eating pancakes and whatever. And all of a sudden I get this frantic phone call from my stepmom, and she's like, oh my God, Michelle, like, where are you? Like, the pastor's wife just called and said that you didn't show up in the bed you were supposed to sleep in. Like, oh my God, where are you? Just totally frantic. Please call as soon as you get this message. And they were watching my boys for that weekend. And so anyways, I was like, hey man, I gotta go. Like, I'll see you later. So I just left, got in my truck, and I was only about a mile away from where the retreat was happening. And so I was like, crap, I'm just gonna go. Forget it. I'm just gonna go, make up a lie. Like, yeah, my truck, you know, broke down on the mountain and I didn't have cell service or whatever. I was just like, I'm just gonna lie to them. So they don't know me anyway, so who cares? And so I started driving there on the highway, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I can't go showing up smelling like alcohol and this guy. Like, I can't do that. So anyway, turned back around on the highway, started driving back. I was like, okay, Lord, I'm just going to go and just be with my sister. Like, who cares, man? They know who I am anyways. My family already knows. So, oh well. then I was like, wait a minute, they have my kids. They could totally take my kids. So, turned back around on the highway, and I started going towards the retreat again. And I was like, God, just give me courage. Just like, help me go in there. Help me make up a lie, Lord. Just help them believe me. And, just praying all this stuff. And so I ended up turning back around on the highway like 6 different times. And so when I get to the retreat, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to so suck. But oh well, I'm just going there to cover my butt. Like they'll never know. And so I get out and, I put my cigarette out and put my red lipstick back on and start walking up to the door. And when the door, I knock and the door opens, this lady is standing there and she's crying. She goes, oh my God, Michelle. She's like, oh my gosh. And right behind her is a lined wall of all these women. There's like a bunch of them. And all of them are like wiping their eyes. And she goes, oh my gosh, Michelle. She goes, we were just knelt around the bed you were supposed to sleep in last night. And we were just praying that no matter what, like God would bring you here. And here you are. And I was like, okay, and just went right into my lie and was just, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, my truck broke down on the mountain, like stupid truck. I've only had it for like a couple months. And then this guy like tried to fix it, but then he didn't know how to fix it and just went into this whole dramatic lie. And anyways, so they said, oh my gosh, well, we were just headed out to go to lunch. You must be starving. Let's just go and you can come with us. And okay, yeah, I am starving, since I was up on the mountain and stuff. And this one lady comes up to me and she says, since you had such a hard night on the mountain, let me buy you lunch. And I was like, oh no, that's okay. I have money. And I was like, oh my God, she totally knows I'm lying. Just tell her. And she goes, no, since you had such a hard night on the mountain, let me buy you lunch. And I was like, okay, yeah, thanks. And the whole time, just like, she totally knows I'm lying. Just, oh my gosh, I was so afraid. And so anyways, we ended up going to this little cafe, and so I ended up ordering just a little half of a sandwich. I was like, yeah, I'm not really a big eater because I had just eaten pancakes. And so I'm like choking down this sandwich, just like trying to make small talk with this lady that I know she knows I'm lying. And I'm like, she's sitting this close to me, so I know she can smell the alcohol on me. And so anyways, we're getting done, and all these other ladies like stand up and they're all wearing white, and they go, hey, let's go to the Christian bookstore. And they just kind of like skipped out like little Smurf and, went to the Christian bookstore, and they weren't really all wearing white, but they look like it to me. And so anyways, we're, they're all going, and I said, I think I'm just going to wait in the van. I don't really feel like going. And so the lady that just bought me lunch says, I'll wait with you. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, great. Gosh, I don't want her to wait with me. What am I going to say? And so anyways, we go out to the minivan, and she gets in, then I get in, and I can still hear the slam of the minivan door as it shuts. And she sits down, and I sit, and she turns towards me and she says, so what triggered you to use again? And I said, pardon me? And she goes, I'm a recovery mentor at the women's prison. What triggered you to use again? And I was just like, I just broke. Just the tears just started pouring out of my eyes. And I was like, every time I like try to be good, I'd like do all this stuff. And I've been going to church and going to Bible study, doing all the right stuff. And then I just do nothing but screw up. I'm nothing but a screw up. And I was telling her about the abortion, which I had just had 12 days before that. And so she listened. And she just looked at me when I was done, and she goes, I'm going to challenge you. And I said, okay. And she goes, I'm going to challenge you to be transparent with these women and give them the opportunity to love you. And I said, women like them don't love women like me. Sorry. And she goes, I'm going to challenge you to be transparent with these women and give them the opportunity to love you. And I was like, all right, you'll see. And so I was just going to do it to prove her wrong. And so she tells me that evening they were having a prayer service, and that we were all just going to sit around and just like tell each other what was going on in our lives and just ask each other to pray over us. And so she's like, so I want you to do that. And I'm going to prepare the leaders and kind of let them know a little bit about your story, so that they're prepared. And so anyway, so we get together that night, and there's 30 of us in a room, and it's just a living room, and they're going around and they're sharing different parts of their story. And compared to my story, it was very light. It was very intimidating because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not ready to hear what I have to say. You know, I mean, these are people who grew up in the church. These are real churchy women. I'm not like that. And so anyway, so they're going around, and I was just about to chicken out, but that lady looks over at me and she's like, you know, she just shot me that look. She's like, okay, your turn. And so I was like, fine, you know. So anyways, when I started sharing my story, I just remember like leaning forward and just my head was held down, and I didn't want to look up at all because I did not want to see the shame in their eyes. I did not want to see the judgment in their eyes, so I didn't make eye contact. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to let you guys into a little bit of my story. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who I am. And so I started going into it and just started listing off, you know, the abuse and the drug addiction and the, you know, the abortion that I just had and all these different things. And when I was done, you know, to my surprise, I was, you know, again, looking down at everyone's feet. Everyone stood up and started walking over to me. And, you know, the thing I thought they were going to do is ask me to leave. And, you know, a lot of women didn't want me around their husbands, and I just thought they were going to ask me to leave. And instead, they came over and they laid hands on me, and they just began like praying over me and just telling me, you know, speaking hope into me. And they were praying over the kids that I had just killed, and was telling me that I was going to get to see them in heaven again. And they were praying over my sons and just praying all these blessings on me. And the part that chokes me up about that is that I just told them who I was, and they didn't judge me. In fact, they loved me, and they showed me they loved me by touching me. You know, it was like I felt very untouchable, and they touched me anyways, and I felt very unlovable, and they loved me anyways. And that was the moment my life changed. It was them actually touching me when I felt so horrible about myself, and I had, you know, teeny tiny bit of hope. You know, they talk about that, you know, all you need is faith the size of a mustard seed, you know, to make mountains move. And that's literally all I had left. And anyway, so it was only 7 days later that I was in a Christian rehab, and those ladies helped me get there. And not only did they help me get there, but they supported me the whole time. They prayed for me. They sent me letters. They came and visited me. And my second challenge from that same lady, her name's Patty, my second challenge from her was to go to that place for 30 days. Even though it was a 1-year program, I told her there was no way I was going for a year, but she challenged me to go for 30 days. And at the end of that 30 days, to pray and ask if God, you know, wanted me to be there longer. Well, he did want me to be there longer, and I was there a year and a half. And so in that time, they said that, you know, it was like 4 years of Bible school in 1 year. And I always wanted that because I actually wanted to go to Bible college or Bible school. And anyways, so I ended up being there for a year and a half, and that's through a series of things that got me to stay. But in that time, I went from giving my heart to Jesus to going all in, and I gave my entire life to him. And so now that's something that is really, really important to me. Like, if I can help anybody do anything, it's to get them to go all in with Jesus. And because he radically changed my life. And it started with those women stepping out in faith and taking a chance on me, you know, and I was way on the outside of their circle of influence. I mean, the lady who first, you know, called me out like that, she could relate to me on 2 little tiny things. One was she ran away from home when she was a teenager, and the other thing is she had smoked weed before. And those were the 2 tiny things that she could relate to me on. But it was enough for me to go, wow, she understands me. You know, she can relate to me, and she's not judging me. And so because she reached me and I was way on the outside of her circle of influence, now I have a huge circle of influence that she can't even touch the way that I can. And so by them taking that chance on me is what totally changed my life. And I know God used them during that time. And he had given me a lot of other outs. He had given me a lot of other times in my life where he, you know, tried to pull me out by his hand, but I refused it. I didn't take it. And so this time I was done, and I took it. And so even though I was still fighting, I wanted it so bad. And I was willing to put that little tiny bit of faith that I had, just like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And so anyways, while I was there in that Christian rehab is when I went all in with Jesus. It's when I was set free from the addictions of meth and of alcohol and cigarettes and all those other things. And that's where God first started showing me how to walk out of that sexual addiction, how to walk out that looking for love in all the wrong places. He didn't deliver me of that. It wasn't something that he just took a wand and went, bing, you're done. It was actually something that he told me, I'm sorry, Michelle, but this one you're going to have to walk out. And like, why, Lord? Like, I would just keep surrendering it to him. Like, why? Like, why can't you just take this from me? I don't want it. I don't want to think the way I think. I don't want to look at people the way I look at them. I don't want to crave them like I do. And, help me, Lord. And so he would say, I'm sorry, but this one you're going to have to walk out. And then he said, later on, he said, but don't worry, I'm walking with you. And I was like, why do I have to do this? Why is it so hard for me? And why isn't there anybody around me who can relate to me? Because none of the girls could relate to that part. And he said, the reason why you're walking this out is because you're going to walk many others out. And so I had to go forward, or I had to go before them so that I could take people by the hand and walk them out of the same type of addiction. So when I was in rehab, I learned a lot of different things. And one of the things I learned how to do is how to surrender everything and how to truly go all in and not hold on to anything with white knuckles. And so anytime I realized I was doing that, I would just lay it at his feet. I would just hand it over and give it to him because I wanted to be free. I didn't want anything holding me back from all that God was calling me to be. And so I just kept laying things down. And one of the things that I laid down every single day, if not several times a day, was my addiction to men, my addiction to sex, and all of that. And I would just lay it down and beg him to take it from me. And instead of him just delivering me of it like he did with the meth addiction, he told me that I would have to walk it out. And like, I'm sorry, but this one you're going to have to walk out. And I was like, why? Why do I have to walk this out? And he said, well, don't worry, I'm walking with you. And like, but why? Why do I have to walk this one out? And he said, because you are going to be walking so many others out of this same thing. And so we need, I need you to go forward. I need you to pave the way. And so I did. And I didn't skip any steps. I went for years without being with a man. I actually went 6 years before meeting my husband and just really working on those types of things. And so, but when I was in there, I remember the specific Bible study because prior to hearing that Bible study, I really believed I'm just trying to get good so I can not go to hell. I mean, I had made so many mistakes. I just believed that I was going to go to hell. I believed that I had committed the unforgivable sin, and I thought that unforgivable sin was abortion. And, I just lived horribly. And I also thought that, because I knew better, I wasn't excused for many of those things. Forgiveness didn't apply to me because I knew better. I knew better all my life. And so those are all lies, and I know that now, but I didn't know it at the time. So I was in there trying to get good so I could possibly get into heaven. But I had no idea that God used people like me. I had never heard a testimony. I never heard a story that resembled anything like mine. So I really thought I wasn't even going to be able to volunteer in the children's ministry or anything like that. And so anyways, I remember going into a Bible study, and it was all about the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, and how she had been married 5 times, but then living with a guy who wasn't her husband. And when she met Jesus, he just accepted her. He loved her. He talked to her. And, he talked to her about repentance, about, going and sinning no more. But what I love about that story is that at the end of her life, at the end of the story, it says, and by her testimony, many were saved. She went back into her hometown and she told everybody her story. She told everybody, what the Lord had done. And it says, by her testimony, many were saved. And that was the very first time that I ever realized that God could use my story. And so from then on, it just catapulted me into just working even harder at getting healthy. And so I developed this huge desire for freedom and did anything I could to get unstuck from whatever was holding me back. And then he just started pouring all these gifts onto me and showing me that I could teach others how to do the same. I could help others get free. I could actually go before them, take them by the hand, mentor them out of those old lifestyles. Or I could tell people my story and it would give them hope. Or I could tell people my story and it would stop them from going down that road. And I realized, that's what I have to offer. I have my story to offer. And it's so crazy because even though I was only raised in a Christian home up until I was 6 years old, I always knew where to return. I always knew it was church. I always knew it was Jesus. I always knew it was praying. even if I didn't walk that out, I always knew that. And so, there's a scripture that talks about train a child up in the way she should go, and when she is old, she'll never depart. It actually says he, but train a child up in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will never depart. And so it doesn't mean that person, just because they're raised that way, doesn't mean they're going to veer off the path, but it means when they're older, they're going to know exactly where to return home to. And when they do that, they will never depart. And I feel like that's a lot of my story. And I always knew where to return. And when I did finally come home, I finally went all in. It was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I have a new life now. I have a new purpose. I mean, God actually can use women like me, and now he uses me mightily. So after I left that Christian rehab, I went right into full-time ministry and became a women's minister of a big, huge Christian ranch, and was there for 4 years. And that's where I really developed this desire to mentor, this desire to disciple, this desire to pour everything I had into other people to help them get to be, who God was calling them to be, and to really just pour hope and help them to get free. And he just started birthing this dream inside of me of purely his. And in fact, the very first vision I had of this was when I was in rehab. I was only out of that lifestyle maybe 10 days. And I had a vision of me in a church, in a small group of women, and I was teaching them about purity, coming out of like sexual addiction and teaching them how to live a pure life. And that was the very first vision I had of this. And then when I was at that Christian ranch, I was only there, about a year or so, 6 months to a year. And that's when God gave me this vision for Purely His. And that's where I had a group of young women that I was mentoring, and they were all different backgrounds, but all heading the same direction. That was becoming Purely His. And I was mentoring them and pouring everything I had into them, helping them to get unstuck from anything that was stopping them from going all in. And then from there, they were going to, get free and be encouraged, know what their calling was, and then they were going to all go back into their own cities, their own towns, their own neighborhoods, and start these same type of groups, and so on and so forth. So it was going to be a discipleship movement. And he's just been birthing that in me and training me how to do it. And then finally, it was time. So a year and a half ago is when we started Purely His. And that vision that was given to me, 7 years ago, is now actually happening. And so down here in Southern Oregon, we have 4 groups going right now. So we have 3 women's groups and 1 men's group. And then up in the Portland area, we have 4 groups going. And then we're doing a bunch of trainings right now and have probably 5 more groups getting ready to launch here in January. And so those dreams that he put in my heart so long ago is actually coming to pass now. And when I remember, going through all my healing, being in rehab, and then going into full-time ministry, it was crazy because I never lost the desire to be married again. I never, not wanted a husband again. I just knew that I needed to be a healthy wife for him. I knew that I needed to come into that relationship without a bunch of bags packed. I knew I needed to unpack those bags and be healthy and be ready for that. And I always just kept my sights on it, and that became kind of the carrot that the Lord would dangle in front of me. It helped me to work harder on myself. And so I lived a drug-free, alcohol-free, sex-free, guy-free life for 6 years before I met him. I'm still drug and alcohol-free, but I lived in celibacy prior to meeting him. And when the Lord released me to actually date and all that, I remember just getting together with him and thinking, how could a guy like him fall for a girl like me? Like, his testimony compared to mine is like this, and mine is like this. And so I remember just having these different insecurities come up, like, how could a guy like him actually fall for a girl like me? And it was through him that the Lord really showed me how much I had actually changed, that I wasn't that old girl at all. I didn't have any resemblance of that girl, and I was completely made new, and I was pure, and my husband was not looking at who I used to be. He was just amazed by the work that I put in with healing with the Lord and my love for the Lord. And so anyways, we dated for 9 months before we got married, And when we got married, we actually got married in that same church where those women were the ones who laid hands on me, which at the time was actually a church I was working at. So the Lord had brought my story full circle by having me actually work at that church. And so I was working there as the event coordinator and ministry coordinator, and I was mentoring girls there. And so anyway, so I'm working at that church, and the day we were getting married, my pastor's wife, the one that I was supposed to sleep in her bed at that women's retreat, so she comes up to me and she goes, this is so crazy. She goes, this is so like God. Like, here you are marrying a guy who 6 years ago would have arrested you, and now he's actually marrying you. And so I thought that was funny because, here I am married to this godly, awesome police officer, and he's married to an ex-drug addict and an ex-sex addict. And he had such compassion on me. He had such love for me and such gentleness, Through him, through our relationship, I've really got to understand like the mercy of God, because really in all actuality, he shouldn't have trusted being with somebody like me, or he shouldn't have, married somebody like me, but he took a chance anyways, and he didn't give me what I did deserve. He actually took a chance on me and had compassion and has even learned from me. And so now, him, even though he was raised in the things of the Lord and raised in a 2-parent home and, raised just knowing that God loved him and all that kind of stuff, he wasn't on fire like I was. So it was so great because when God brought us together, it was like my fire fanned his. And so we became incorporated about 1.5 years ago and launched our first groups in September down here in Medford and also up in the Portland area. But the dream is, the vision that God's given me is going to go way outside of Oregon. So he told me in the very beginning when I was writing notes and stuff, I was writing down, that the Lord says to go into and I was about ready to say, go into the whole nation. And he was like, go into all the world. I'm like, I remember just writing it, and it's almost like he took my hand, was like, world, like we're to go into all the world and make disciples of all men, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey all that he commanded. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, that's way bigger than me. He's like, well, it's not bigger than me. And so I really believe that although we're starting these little tiny groups in little tiny Medford and little tiny Oregon, I believe that this is really going to explode, and it's going to happen organically. So it's going to happen where these mentoring groups are going to reproduce, and they're going to go all over the place. And so we actually have our first woman who stepped up to the plate, and she is going to translate our information in Spanish. So I know that one of the very first ways that we're going to expand is we're going to go into the Latino community and possibly into Mexico. So who knows where all of that's going to go. But that's really exciting. And so the other way that the Lord confirmed that we were going to go into all of the world is the day after our website launched, I got an email from a lady in South Africa that says, would you be willing to mentor me? I was like, oh my gosh, so it's like happening that fast? And so I've been mentoring her for several months now, and she told me that it is her goal to bring Purely His to South Africa this next year. And so, just things like that are coming to me that I'm not even trying. And so I just know God's hand is on this. But about our mentoring groups, they're very different than what a lot of groups are because, first of all, they're closed groups. There's only 8 people per group and then 2 mentors. And the whole heart behind these groups is to go all in with Jesus and get unstuck from anything in the way of that. And so we don't just deal with the symptoms of people's issues, we deal with the unresolved issues. So we deal with the root of issues, and we talk about it and we resolve it and we rip it out so that the symptoms can go away. And so we don't spend a lot of time talking about addictions or eating disorders or self-harm or divorce or grief or whatever. We talk about what caused that. Well, let's talk about that. And so I've actually developed a curriculum that we use in our mentoring groups, which goes along with 5 different steps. And it's just steps that God has placed on my heart, and they really work. They just serve as an outline for people to be able to use to actually effectively mentor, to know where you're trying to get them and then how you're going to get them there. And so our groups are very relational, and because we talk about such deep issues, we're all about dropping our mask and keeping it real. So once you are at such a deep level and you're sharing that kind of information with each other, there's no way that you can't connect on a deep level and then have a relationship with them forever. So that is our hope, is that we're doing everything relational, because that's how Jesus is. But the other thing that we're doing is we are raising up workers from within the harvest. So the Bible talks about the harvest is ripe and the workers are few. And you'll find that in everything. It's really hard to get volunteers, especially in the church. It's really hard to get people to step up to the plate and actually do something. But there is a ton of people in need. And so we really focus on raising up workers from within the harvest. So if there aren't people who are already willing to do this, then we're going to raise them up through these groups. And so it's the best way to be mentored is through one of our groups. And so at the beginning of this ministry, I just kept asking the Lord, like, what are we doing, Lord? What are we doing? Just hone it in exactly what you're calling me to do. And he would say, the harvest is ripe, the workers are few, go after the workers. And so we're having all these mentoring groups going right now, but behind the scenes, I'm also mentoring mentors. So we have all these groups that are getting ready to launch out of those people that we've been mentoring behind the scenes. And so with our mentors, we don't just teach them and then let them loose. We actually stay involved in their life, stay holding them accountable, continuing to pour into them, encouraging them. So even though they're leading a group, we're still meeting with them once a month to make sure that they're still doing okay, that they're, emotionally okay, spiritually okay, and we just stay involved in their lives, because we believe in mentoring that goes the distance, not just, help someone get unstuck and then we pull out of their life. It's really cool because even though I have hardly any education and I haven't graduated from high school and things like that, God has gifted me with this wisdom to be able to see where people are stuck at just by having a conversation. And he just points it out to me. It's like, there it is. And I'm able to help people get unstuck from things that have even bound them for 20 years. I'll see them get unstuck in literally an hour or less and see basically their whole body language change. I've seen where people were completely full of shame have joy like within moments, and it happens all the time. And what the Lord showed me is that I can show other people how to do that. So that's what I've been doing, is just showing, like, what are the telltale signs? How can you tell where someone's stuck? Now, how do you help them get unstuck? So that's just been really awesome. I've seen a lot of miracles take place, a lot of lives change. I've seen a lot of, heroin addicts that are now, working alongside of us in the ministry. And I've seen people who were going to get a divorce that are now living happily ever after. And I've seen just a lot of things take place. I've seen women who have lost their kids to foster care, be able to get them back. And people who never thought they could be used in ministry because they had abortions, step out and are actually in ministry now. And so I get that front row seat of seeing lives change. And I love that. It's like my favorite thing in the world is just watching those miracles unfold. And so the more I can reproduce myself and others, the more I can kind of light other people's fire for that same thing and equip them with the tools to be able to pull that off. I mean, how quickly could our world change? Because I have my own circle of influence, but they have their own circle of influence. We all have people that we can reach that other people can't even touch. And but we have to be reached first. We have to go all in with Jesus first. We have to get unstuck first, because we can only take people as far as we've gone. And so I try to help people go past that. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey, like so far. Like I've learned so much that I had no idea I didn't even know. It's kind of like the further I go with the Lord, the more I realize all that I didn't know. And so, we've set up a corporation and I did all that by myself, and I have board members now, and, just all these things that God has taken me on this path that I just have never walked before. So there's a lot of walking by faith and not by sight. But one thing he's made very clear to me is the vision that he's given me, and I'm not going to stop. So no matter how afraid I am, no matter how ill-equipped I feel, I'm not going to stop. And I have a lot of people that he's been bringing around me to help move that vision forward. So I was just thinking back to a sermon that I had listened to, and it was talking about, what is it that you have in your hands? That's what you use. And I would always just go, I don't have anything. It's like, and then he asked it again, what is it that you have in your hands right now? That's what God wants to use. And I was like, my story. That's what I have to offer. And so the cool part about this ministry is it's birthed out of my story. It's not anything that I went to college for. It's not anything that I necessarily learned in a church service. It's just every part of my story, and including the parts of healing, including the hopeful parts and where I am now, that God has been able to use every single part of it. Like absolutely nothing from my story has gone to waste. Not the drug addiction, not the abortions, not the divorces, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, my mental illnesses, and all the different things that I went through, even being a bad mom and being a bad daughter and a bad sister and all that. All of those things have been able to be used for His honor and His glory. And I have been able to reach so many people. I've been able to help so many people get unstuck and be able to give them hope or give them a warning not to go down certain paths. And it's just been incredible because God used all my trash and has turned it into a treasure. And I remember just thinking about Him. It's like, for everything that He's done for me, like I'm going all in. I'm going to go so hard for Jesus. Like I'm not ever going to stop. And I went hard for the devil in the world. I gave him everything I had back then. So why wouldn't I give my Savior even more than that? And so I'm just really, really excited about what I get to do. And it doesn't mean that I don't go through hard times now, because I do. I've gone through one of the hardest times after going all in than I did even when I was, back in all of my sin. But it's such a different way now because I have such incredible hope. And I do know now that God works all things together for good. And so He is able to use my story to help others. And He's able to use my story to help others get unstuck. And my story trained me. And so not only was I trained by that, but then God has gifted me to be able to help people through it. Well, the cool part about this ministry is that it's for everyone. This is not limited to drug addicts and, single moms and, people who are divorced. This is really for all walks of life. This is for people who don't have hope. This is for people who feel like they've lost their calling or they've missed their calling. This is for people who are just full of shame or are very lonely. And so what we try to do in these groups is have very diverse groups from all different ages, all different backgrounds. It's just that we've all made the commitment to go the same direction, and that's becoming purely His. That is where we're all discovering that the story that we went through, it's not going to be for nothing. The story that we went through can actually be used by God to help bring hope and healing to other people. And so what's so cool about a ministry like this or our ministry is that we're totally real and we are full of people who have made a lot of mistakes, but we're going to keep it real with people. And so from the very first time that we meet with them, the leaders are always encouraged to go first. So the leaders are to drop their mask and keep it real. They're never above those that they're ministering to. They're either at their level or they're beneath them. They are taught to be humble leaders and to consider others better than themselves. And what's so awesome about these kind of groups is that they will have hope and they will become new. They will become the person that God has called them to be. Because really what happens is that, what God has made them, is fearfully and wonderfully made. But there's all this junk that's covering up that person. And what we do by resolving these issues in their life is we help them to uncover who they really are. And then we encourage them to be all that God's called them to be. We don't ask them to pretend to be something that they're not. We ask them to be true to who they really are. And a lot of times people can't see who they really are. So when you have people that are up in your business and really learning about you, it helps them to help you know who you are. That didn't make any sense, but anyways. So one of the cool things about this ministry is that you get the chance to be you, to be totally real, to not be further ahead than where you actually are and not be less than what you are. It's actually you being you and finding a new purpose and finding a new life and being able to share that with others. Right from the very first time these groups are meeting, they're learning how to mentor, they're learning how to disciple, they're learning how to use their story to help others. And maybe just a little bit more about like my current life now. Just because I think sometimes I spend so much time on it sucked, and then I forget how awesome it is now. So so what's so neat is the last day that I was in rehab, there was a Bible study being taught. And I knew that this word was specifically for me, but the Lord told me that I would be the Moses to lead my family out of Egypt. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Because at that time, my mom and my sister were still stuck in drugs and stuck in that lifestyle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the Moses to lead them out of that lifestyle. And as we've gone further, I didn't realize it, but my dad was also an alcoholic. And so my mom came out of that old lifestyle 2 years after me. So she actually has 6.5 years clean and sober now and serving the Lord again. So 27 years of praying for her. She's actually back with the Lord now and serving him with everything she's got, totally clean and sober. And my sister got saved through this process about 4 years after I went all in. And then just 2 years ago, my dad got clean and sober. And so that's been amazing. And both of my sons have grown up to be just fine young men. They're 17 and 20 now. Both of them are Christians. Both of them have gotten baptized actually the same day I did. And the awesome part about that is that they've both forgiven me. And so we have this new life together where I get to finish strong as a good mom. And it doesn't matter how bad I blew it, but I actually get to be a good mom now by the grace of God. And he's even blessed me with 2 daughters that I get to be their stepmom. And it's so neat because what Satan stole from me was 2 children that I aborted, and now he's given me 2 children, to be a stepmom to. And so, I mean, that's just the grace and the love of God. And I have this amazing, awesome husband who is gentle and loving and actually serves in the ministry with me now. And so to be able to be loved the way love is supposed to be, and actually to be in full-time ministry with him is even better. And my life is just incredible now. So it doesn't matter how bad it was, it can always be better. And I really have no complaints. Even though things aren't always easy, it's so worth it. And yeah, life is really good now. And when you live your life on purpose, when you take all the crap that you've gone through and all the things that God has set you free from, to be able to put it in his hands and allow him to use it for his honor and glory, there's no greater joy than that. I literally, ministry is definitely one of my very highest priorities. It's my relationship with Jesus, it's my family, and then it's ministry. And I know ministry a lot of times competes with my family because no matter where I go, I am ministering. And so whether I'm at the grocery store, whether I'm meeting with a girl for coffee, whether I'm running these groups or going on stage and telling my testimony, everywhere I go, I'm looking for an opportunity because I'm not going to waste any more time. I wasted 30 years of my life, and I'm not going to waste the next 30 years. And so living my life on purpose has brought me incredible amounts of joy. And there's so many times that even though those things that I went through were the greatest shame of my life, and there were things that I didn't used to want to confess, I didn't used to want to tell anybody those things about myself, I now, in my own private time, I thank the Lord for all the things I've gone through because it's opened up so many opportunities for me. So it's like the worse your story, the more opportunities you have. And once I realized that and let that click, it's just been amazing. So yeah.